So that's what I'm saying. The text is like an object. It's gonna change perspective based on where you're standing. I don't know.
Hello?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I missed you, baby sweet. It was a day.
It was a day.
Please tell me you're seeing this too.
From Seattle, we're Drinking the Movies. I'm Taylor Baker.
And I'm Michael Clausen.
Oh, hey, Michael.
Hey, Taylor. What's going on?
Oh, not too much. I heard that my friend on the other side of the line here became an uncle today. Is that true?
That is right. My fiance's sister had her baby first thing this morning, so new member of the family. Very exciting.
Member of the family. Happy day. We're covering VIFF movies, so it's a happy day for us. We ended up watching a couple of really delightful films this week, in my opinion. So yeah, I guess let's just kick it right off and get into first impressions of Netflix's Dick Johnson is Dead, huh?
Let's do it.
Just the idea that I might ever lose this man is too much to bear. He's my dad.
Let's start walking. Just start walking to me. That's fantastic.
I suggested we make a movie about him dying. He said yes.
She kills me multiple times.
Action!
The resurrected dad.
Yeah, resurrected dad.
But now it's upon us, the beginning of his disappearance.
The thing I hate most about my memory loss is that it hurts people's feelings.
You know that you woke up in the middle of the night last night. You got fully dressed. Do you remember any of that?
No.
Yeah.
What can we do about that?
I don't know.
Everybody has to sort of prepare because everybody dies.
I love life too much for that. Oh man, sweetie, your father is a wreck.
It's just inevitable and a part of who we all are.
Yeah.
The fact that he's willing to keep doing this.
Right?
He's doing for you with love.
He's doing it for me with love. Yeah, he'll do anything for me. Can you just like put one arm up against the wall? Like, yeah, that's nice.
All right, Michael, that was the trailer for Kirsten Johnson's Dick Johnson is Dead. What do you think?
I think we might be able to play a good drinking game where every time Dick dies, take a drink. That could be fun.
I think we would also potentially end up in the hospital.
That is possible. I think this looks great. Former listeners would know that we adore Camera Person, Kirsten Johnson's last documentary. I think this looks like a cool kind of companion piece in a way, since that one talked a little bit more about her relationship with her mom, and this will be a little more centered on her dad, who did make an appearance, I think, in Camera Person. But, you know, tonally, this is so different. There's a little bit more whimsy. There's this kind of morbid humor to it. I think it looks really cool. What about you? Yeah,
I agree with everything you said there, especially, you know, it's one of the best documentaries Camera Person was. I think that I'm a little bit more emotionally hit by the trailer that I just watched, seeing him lose his memory and that brief discussion about her asking these questions, and that really deeply personal thing where he says, the thing that hurts me the most about my memory loss is that people think that or that people get their feelings hurt by it. And that's just so you know, deeply specific and personal, and a really lovely observation from someone who is going through that. I think I'm probably gonna love that documentary. Yeah, I like this kind of idea of a proactive form of grieving in a way, and using cinema to do it, and it's a pretty cool idea. And to have it to remember him with when he's gone, especially the moment where she tells him to move his arm a little bit so that he's more convincing dead. Yeah, might invite tears and laughs, probably a little bit of both. But our next first impression is going to be on MLK FBI from director Samuel Pollard, who also directed our first documentary that we'll be covering in a second here, Mr. Soul. So let's get on to MLK FBI.
Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
After Dr. King gave his famous March on Washington speech, Wednesday, August 28, 1963, in a memo dated the 30th of August, no later than that, the second person in the FBI, it may have been Sullivan, sends an urgent memo in which he says, after the March on Washington, it's clear that Martin Luther King Jr. is the most dangerous Negro in America. And we have to use every resource at our disposal to destroy him.
All right, Michael, that was the trailer for MLK FBI. What do you think?
Well, it is a little hard to go on. This is a shorter first impression than we normally do. This is only a mere kind of 60 seconds or so, but it looks like it's kind of going to be predominantly archival footage, which I usually kind of respond to. I do like that. It's kind of a haunting 60-second clip to, know that we're going to be kind of getting this perspective of MLK as an enemy to be taken down. That is sort of a disturbing angle that we're going to take up in this doc. I'm intrigued. I don't know that I have that much more to say about it, just given the shortness of this clip. But yeah, I'm intrigued. What about you?
Yeah, those are things that I would echo as well. Not to jump the on the horse too soon, but in Mr. Soul, I think one of the best things about that film is the assembly and editing of the archival footage. And so knowing that some of the expertise on display there is going to be reflected here, and with that specific thesis in mind of showing us how MLK was treated by the federal government, and just watching that unfold through this form is going to be very intriguing and probably upsetting.
Most definitely.
So yeah, that's a brief reaction, but I think we can all agree that MLK being dead is not the best outcome. So we'll wait to judge more until the documentary comes out.
That's right. That one is playing at NYFF right now, but I don't know that I've seen a release date, but I think people could watch it at NYFF if they wanted to.
Yeah, and hopefully there should be a trailer soon. The website says coming soon, so it should be on the way.
Today's podcast is presented by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. We recently joined as members, and you can too. Apply today to become a member and immediately be connected with advertisers that fit your audience. That's podgo.co at podgo.co.
All right, let's get to a film co-directed by Samuel Pollard, director of MLK FBI, as well as Melissa Hazlett. This film is Mr. Soul.
We know that soul will be included in the television history of this decade when things go down. But because I hadn't seen enough images of myself, I watched. Should some unaware group of people take soul off, I won't see black people creating, searching, and acting instead of reacting.
That program was so beyond its time that it was in time.
And the moment that went on that television, it went boom, we're back.
I just had images of blacks all around the country saying, yes, yes, tell them yes.
Black voices speaking to the problems of our time.
This is serious business. Our lives were at stake.
There exists, as far as I know, no TV program that deals with my culture so completely, so freely, and so beautifully. There is no alternative to soul.
All right, Mr. Soul. This is a documentary about a television program from the late 60s and early 70s that I had never heard of before called Soul with an exclamation mark, which was sort of created and hosted by a guy named Ellis Hayslip. Had you ever heard of the show before watching this documentary?
Not even once. Not
Right.
even once.
Absolutely. Okay. How'd you respond to this documentary? Do you feel like you got a good sense of what this show was all about and who this guy was, Mr. Ellis Hayslip?
Yeah, I think that definitely. Well, no, I don't think I got to know who he was, but I do think I got to know what he was about, and I think I got to know about the show in this time. And I think that the show itself never really elicited who Ellis was, and from all accounts, Ellis was shifty and not particularly one to be put into definitions. You know, he there's that moment in the film where someone was speaking with him. I think it was one of his producers or co-showrunners, and he says, "You don't think I lie?"
Mm-hmm.
Directly to him. And I think that that's a great, he's a great legend. He's a great character. I really enjoyed spending time with the work that he did. And I would love to have seen more of Soul, but I don't think that this is a man who we will ever really get a grasp on.
Yeah, I would agree. It strikes kind of an interesting balance between just giving us a look at the show itself and a little bit on who he was, some of his background, his childhood, his relationship with his dad, but it kind of just seems to accept, like you were saying, that maybe he was a little hard to crack in some way. So it's not going to go try too hard to do that. It's just going to give us a little bit of a sense of who he might have been, but more importantly, it's about his relationship to the show. It's really not a biography. I think something about the poster, the title itself seems like it might be that, but it's more about the connection between the man and what he created. And I think it's really fun to see this show and just the vast range of Black talent that he elevated to the public sphere through this program. It's interesting to watch a show like that with a host that is just so remarkably different from what we think of when we think of like late night hosts today. I think about some of those guys and how they ask their questions to a guest only because they're really kind of setting themselves up for a witty retort. They really do.
Or they rehearse.
Totally. Something about how this guy is really giving that platform over to these different artists and thinkers and really kind of letting himself step away and giving them the floor is really kind of humbling and inspiring.
I agree. When I think about him personally, I don't think that he was a host. I don't think that he really ran a night show in that sense. I know that that's kind of the way that this is all presented, but I'm just struck afterward feeling like he was a curator of art, and the art that he was curating was not hundreds of years old or thousands of years old. It was contemporary. It was now. It was here, and he was trying to find the raw of it. He was trying to touch the nerves of it with the artists and to share the things that he found beautiful with the world. And I think that's why I like him and this project so much, because there's not that me here in any sense other than him honestly wanting to engage with the art that's presented. I don't know anyone else that I would point to that has done what he's doing here in that way.
Yeah. I mentioned late night only as a point of comparison to try and illustrate the kind of personality he was in his role in this show, not to try and group it in that. It's obviously a very different kind of format.
But I think that even the film's marketing perhaps kind of does present it like that. And I think that while that's like that is how you potentially would have to classify him with the definitions we have, I'd feel more comfortable saying he was a television curator of art.
Yeah. For me, I'm not sure this is a documentary where the whole is that much greater than the sum of its parts. It does feel sort of like a collection of material, and I'm not sure how much more we get than just the summation of it, but it's a pretty entertaining watch, if for no other reason than to get such a diverse range of artists in a really short period of time. That's sort of just enjoyable and entertaining in its own right.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think that might be true of the sum of Soul itself, that it is the sum of its parts, not it, that is great. And that's maybe why I feel that curation aspect to it. I'm very interested in who Ellis was, and how he did what he did at such a high, meaningful level. But I'm not super intrigued by the character. I'm more appreciative of the character. And I don't think that there's anything wrong or negative with that. Where I might in a different documentary if the sum of its parts was better than the whole. But here it feels right to know that one of the most meaningful things that I saw was him having assisted a poet get an interview with James Baldwin in London. And just watching the interview, that he had merely gotten these two people together. That's all he had to do with it. But that was one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, is James Baldwin interacting with this young poet. And there's just something uncanny about the beauty of that he just, he brought people together for love and experience and art. And I really like that part of it.
Yeah, I don't remember which talking head it was that described him as a gardener, as someone who is planting the seeds, carefully allowing them to grow, putting the right things together. That seems like an apt metaphor. I liked that. I don't remember who said that. I also liked a quote we get from him at one point where he's talking about not wanting to educate and not even entertain. It's purely about sharing the Black experience as he knows it, and as great as he knows it can be, which is just a perspective that I think you can kind of lose today. I think people can understand a show that doesn't seek to educate, but when you say you also aren't even trying to entertain necessarily, it's just about the value of exposure and elevation of voices in and of itself that is kind of radical, right? Like, you think of the promotion of a lot of Black artistry today, sometimes it can feel like it's content put forth by various streaming services or whatever to entertain, to grab us, to sell us. He's not trying to sell us on anything. He's trying to celebrate. That's really cool.
Absolutely. Yeah, I would say that I don't remember where I got this from, but it's basically that film and television and just art in general now is product. It's something you put in a pipeline, and you're just trying to put more stuff in the pipeline to sell to more people. And there was not an ounce of the pipeline production aspect of it to Ellis in any of these interactions. They were things that he had been moved by or questioned or interacted with that he wanted to follow up on. And that shines through in a really earnest and kind of moving way, I think.
Yeah, it seems kind of impossible to imagine him when he was thinking about who to put on next, whether it was a dance, a poet. It's hard to imagine him thinking about the different kinds of content he would use. I cannot imagine him ever using that word to describe what it is that he is putting to the screen. It's culture. And we use the word content so often these days. It's nice to think of a guy who would never have maybe had that word even in his vocabulary.
He was too analog for that.
Yeah, totally. These were people. These were Black artists. This is culture. This is not anything he's trying to sell us. Yeah,
I entirely agree. So one of the things that I was most struck by that I wanted your feedback on, since you're normally a little bit more keen into this than me, is when we're watching these archival footage of the project of Soul, Were you enamored with some of the camera work as much as I was during like Stevie Wonder's performance or some of those dances?
I was very curious about it at times. I mean, sometimes I was actually a little just unsure, to be honest, about what was like the footage itself versus what the documentarian of Mr. Soul was doing. But I think it was maybe Stevie Wonder who had some effects going on at the same time. I'm not sure if that's the kind of thing you're talking about.
Yeah.
But that was very striking. And yeah, it was great. I loved it.
I thought that as well as there's a few dances in the camera choreography to the dancer and the timing of how they would pull back to a different camera and show these different angles with shadow and light. I don't think I've ever seen television directing of that caliber in the 60s before. I guess maybe some anthology series might have had that going, but I mean in a public access late night format like that, which is what it was slotted into, I just can't think of anything else that was as artistic with the lens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's hard to just think about the scenes that particularly stood out to you, you know. I'm remembering the musician who towards the end of the set just destroyed his folding chair.
Yes.
Love that. The
While
sense,
playing three saxophones at the same time.
It was awesome. The sense that anything can happen on a show like that, I think, is often missing from shows like this that are supposedly live or reality television or whatever like that. They can often feel scripted, just as scripted as true scripted television.
Or more so, even.
Yeah, 100%.
There's at least acting flourishes in, written narrative content, whereas sometimes when you're watching people not even behave correctly on like Jimmy Fallon or something, you're like, this is gross.
Yeah. Just the raw kind of energy of that was pretty great to see. I like that they truly ceded the floor for these artists to just do whatever they needed to do.
And the audience became part of the show in a way that I don't think any show really has an audience be part of it in that way right now that I can think of. That was very, very moving.
Yeah. I mean, shows today wouldn't dare cut to an audience and show us that the applause maybe isn't as vigorous as the sound makes us think it is. This show can pretty confidently turn to the audience and show us how engaged and enthusiastic they are.
Or dancing or enthralled or, just collapsed with movement. Really, really cool. Do you have anything else you want to go over here? Should we get to favorite scenes or favorite moments? What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it. Any favorite moments? Any parts that really stood out to you?
Yeah, well, I think we are honestly already talked about both of them. And my favorite scene itself would be the entire scene with James Baldwin discussing art with that poet briefly, and then seeing the cuts to their hands. And him talking with his hands. And then my favorite moment would probably be the Stevie Wonder moment, because man, that was just out of this world.
Yeah. Mine's not quite as specific. I guess I'll just say that I really responded to a lot of the poetry just because it's something that there's really no great platform for today. And that is just so kind of striking to see performed. It's something that just, I think, is not as visible in the way that it should be, because it's so exciting to watch someone just deliver poetry so organically and forcefully. Some of that was really powerful stuff. Very cool stuff.
It was. I agree. All right. Well, that was Mr. Soul. On to the VIFF documentary, Into the Storm.
Los 14:15, los niños caminan en una fila de una navaja. Y esa es la edad en la que está Johnny ahorita, es la edad límite. Cuando yo me voy a dormir, que sueño es saliendo campeón del mundo.
He's really raw. That's really exciting in a surfer. He's hypnotizing.
I think he has a chance, but he lives in a very chaotic environment.
¿Sabes que eres bueno? Tú sabes, pero nunca...
No te buscamos,
pero
vamos a buscar, vamos a buscar.
Faltó, ya corría para sufrir, ya para llenar campeón nacional.
He's been ripping here. He's been training every day for his contest and he doesn't show up.
Deja esa nota cojuda que tienes, bro, de pandillero huevón.
No estoy seguro si mi futuro está clarísimo en el surfing. Quién sabe, hoy día de repente es un camino oscuro y...
All right, Michael, we're talking about En la Tormenta, or Into the Storm. I like the Spanish pronunciation more because the torment really is centrifugal to understanding the boy here.
I agree. And the word torment, yeah, that just sounds more appropriate, whereas Into the Storm sounds more like a weather doc, right? I like that title too. We'll go with that.
But yeah, this is a documentary about a boy over a period of some years who has a prospective surfing career and is coming out of a barrio that is very poverty stricken. His mother's in kind of dire situation. His father's in jail. It's a story about poverty and trying to overcome it.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of a doc of about athletic achievement in a way. It's a very accessible doc. I could imagine a wide range of people responding to this in a very kind of natural way. I think this has some really easy entry points because it's such a poignant doc about, a kid's poverty informing his ability to perform in his sport and as he chases this dream of becoming a pro surfer. I did find it very poignant, very, very emotional and very empathetic and kind of tactfully done. I was kind of impressed by the span of time it covers and how it condenses that to a pretty digestible runtime. This is under an hour and a half or so. Yeah, so I'll say I like this doc. What about you?
I do like this doc, but I think that some of the emotional through line for the narrative could definitely be improved on. The point about his father and how important that becomes by the end of this documentary. I think it would have really paid off to start the documentary with some sort of an allusion to that, whether it's because they shot this sequentially and maybe they didn't have the footage for that. Maybe it's just placing a phone call now on the other side of 5 years to the mother and asking her to explain why the father went to jail and when that was in Yanni's life. And that would kind of set up for, the coming, resolution of his father coming out of prison. But I think without that, the film does wander a little bit, which is like life. So I don't think it's anything really poor here. I just think that it would really be a lot more engrossing if there were some more narrative structure to it as we move through.
Yeah, that makes sense. When the father does sort of finally arrive in Johnny's life toward the end of the doc, you didn't necessarily know that exactly was the specific thing that was going to sort of unlock Johnny in a way, that was going to sort of enable him to get back in touch with this sport, that was going to be the thing that lets him clear his head. Maybe a bit more anticipation or something like that would have helped. I could see that. Yeah,
because he is, this is a unique film in which, the narrator tells us that we don't have, that they're having a hard time talking to Yanni because he will not tell them what's going on with him. And so I think that if you have that kind of in the back of your head that this is him trying to be the man of the house, and that his father is in prison, and that's a little bit more hammered home, then maybe a lot more of this stuff becomes more sticky and really, really moving, I think.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. One of the things I was kind of impressed by was the fact that this documentarian got himself in kind of a hard place by picking a subject who is so hard to get through to. Like, how is a documentarian supposed to get through to his subject when the people even closest to the kid can't get through to him?
And even the kid can't get through to himself in one of the scenes where he's competing and he doesn't take a single wave.
Yeah. And so instead, the documentary kind of turns just to the people in his orbit, the coaches specifically, to sort of try and illuminate for us what they think is going on with him, which on paper would kind of worry me that, like, you're not digging deep enough into the subject. You're turning to the people around him. But I actually think it kind of works because I don't think people try to overanalyze. They just try to empathize. If people were trying to say more than they really know about what's going on inside his head, you would feel like it was reaching. But I think there is something really poignant about the people saying, we can't get through to him, and that's why this is so hard. And the documentarian just kind of embracing that rather than trying to uncrack him or something like that.
I think that the documentarian got really lucky in that both these coaches, I don't know either of their names, unfortunately, but the one who plays more of a father figure to him, and then the very kind woman that helps select him to this program to begin with, they're very eloquent but restrained, and they're not pushy, and they never say anything further than they should. They don't share anything that's too personal about him either. They strike that really fine line of being morally good while providing insight to someone who doesn't want to be seen.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and as someone who doesn't normally gravitate towards docs about athletes, that's just not my first impulse in selection of documentaries, partly just because they're usually, by definition of the sport, they're kind of interested in the physical. We get the difficulty of training and potential injuries and that kind of thing. I feel like this benefits from the uniqueness of just being about his psychology and just the importance of an athlete being able to clear their head when they're doing their thing, and how that's just sort of a benefit of where you come from. If you come from a background that allows you to clear your head of the kinds of worries that some people have, whether it's just putting the food on the table for their family and that kind of thing, that is a huge benefit in all kinds of areas of life. And I think that's just a nice way that this doc differentiates itself, is by sort of honing in on the psychology rather than the skill. He's got the skill to hack it, clearly.
Yeah, that's very true. I think that you didn't say this, and I'm sure that there's documentaries that I'm even thinking of right now that don't follow this, but a lot of sports documentaries are by nature self-gratifying. They are showing how great someone is at something, and it's kind of ego propaganda almost. And there's a few that don't do this. I would say Diego Maradona last year did not do this. I think that what is that? The Art of Perfection with John McEnroe, I think also did not do that at all. And I think that this does not do that. And that's a really fine line to not kind of become ego type gratifying propaganda of how good you are at something and how hard you work, but rather because of the nature of Yanni's life, it's more look at this kid try to do something that someone his age shouldn't really have to try to do, especially in the beginning. By the end, you want him to begin to take responsibility, and the responsibility that he takes, he's only able to do that because of these figures in his life and these opportunities he's been given over the time that we've seen him. It's as a piece of human life, it's very, very moving. As a documentary, I think it has its flaws, but regardless of that, the people and the way they behave are really moving.
Yeah. The docs you talk about that tend to inflate egos a little bit tend to sort of just talk about the gift, right?
Mm-hmm.
That they just had something that the other kids didn't have, and they doubled down on it, and they became one of the greats. And like, this is just feels a little more real to me in showing that like half the battle is a little bit of luck and having the resources, having the support, right? He performed well on the right day. He had coaches who decided to invest in him and show real concern for him. He clearly has the gift.
It didn't hit him in the lung.
Totally, right? It went right through his back. It came out the other side. That's
a family decided to take him in when he most needed to be taken in a different area. Just there's so much luck and perseverance in this kid. And he was in such a hard situation. There's a few moments where he's talking, and I think he's like 15 or 16. It's fairly early on. And he's saying that he's going to do what he's going to do to take care of his mom and to help his cousin. And to be that age and have that much responsibility on you, it's really easy to see why he went through the struggles that he went through. And it's exciting to see, how that pays off by the end, where he places like 5th in the world or whatever that was. For youths before he turned 19, which I think he's 19 right now. And I believe that he's trying to come to America to begin the next stage of his career. So I think there's like a GoFundMe that people can look up if they watch this documentary and want to contribute to that at all.
Oh, that's cool. Any other thoughts? I like this documentary. I think it's very accessible. I would recommend it to people. I think it's the kind of doc where if you read the description and it sounds interesting, you're probably going to like it.
Yes. Yeah, I think it's not only a documentary that's like good for the surfing community, but I think it's a documentary that's good for people that are interested in people overcoming tough things. Because this kid's gone through more than most kids. This reminds me of Midnight Family. Like, this is brutal circumstances and just sheer hustle and will to get out of it, and a little bit of gift. Like when you're watching this kid carve those waves and do some of the spins that he does, he's got a gift for it. But there's also a lot of other hard work that he put in. So I would highly recommend this. If I had to pick a favorite scene, I think it would be some of the splash cinematography where water is actually hitting the camera at the same time that it's capturing some of the movements that he's doing on his board. How about you?
Yeah, I would have to second that. I think a lot of the cinematography is pretty great in just capturing him on the water. And yeah, what's there to complain about when you're just watching someone who knows how to surf?
Yeah, exactly. All right, on to My Mexican Bretzel. All right, Michael, we're talking about My Hispanic Pretzel.
We start trying to unpack that, just what exactly that means in the context of this film.
Yeah, so Bretzel is pretzel in German. I'll say that. And Mexican is obviously Mexican. And so naturally, I don't know how to explain this movie. I don't know that it is a movie. Yeah, I think we're done. Did we cover it all?
That's it. Yeah, this is, an interesting episode we're doing of the podcast, because this is festival coverage. This is also a doc talk. However, at the end of the day, after watching this film, My Mexican Bretzel, I don't think I would even call it a documentary because of what it ultimately reveals itself to be. Because, this is a film that's blending fact and fiction in interesting ways. The director's name is Nuria Jimenez.
Her directorial debut.
That's right. It's essentially a found footage film. It's made up, I think, into almost entirely, I believe, of found footage that we are suggested it was shot by a man named Leon Barnett. Is that correct?
Yes.
Or is it Barrett? Sorry. That we assume was shot by a man named Leon Barrett, who we see in this found footage, along with a woman who we assume is named Vivian Barrett. And it's essentially a silent film where on top of this found footage, what's sort of guiding us through a story is diary, text from the woman we see on screen, Vivian Barrett. So it is suggested that the text we see on screen overlaid on top of this found footage is archival material, essentially, right? I don't know how much more to talk about the form without spoilers. Should we just go for it, or what?
We cannot talk about this film in any way without spoiling the entire film, which I think having it spoiled before you watch it is kind of essential to even watching it, to be honest.
I agree. I think it's the better way to watch it.
Yeah, because I think that you might not even know what you're looking at otherwise. So I will also say that there are crucial moments in the film that do have sound. And like 24 frames from Abbas Kiarostami, when they come, they are incredible. They are deeply pulling moments in the film when those sound effects are moved to conjoin with the screen, whether it's steel chains or an airplane going at high velocity, potentially crashing. It's all very, very exciting. Yeah, this is, to me, a film that is, I mean, by accident, it is technically a film, but it almost feels more like a sculpture of some sort, where you're looking at human experience, and like the way that you look at it will not necessarily be the same as the way that you touch it with your skin. And that's about as definitive as I can get on how I can even think about explaining my interaction with the movie. It's so complex to talk about these diary entries that are so deeply personal and ruminatory, and also based on sayings of a false prophet, as they are layered over what is ostensibly a very, very happy marriage, but the content of the diary is not this. And just witnessing how text can alter the visual in that way, it makes me think of the title of that great Will Ferrell film, Stranger Than Fiction. That was something that I thought about that statement, which is such a great title for a film, and how apt that was here, because neither of these things are really fictional, but together they make a fiction that is in a superposition of being extremely real.
Yeah. So it's this fictional narrative imposed on found footage material, and I guess part of what was just so striking to me about this form, and there being no voice to accompany this text, is partly just kind of this dissonance between the joyfulness of watching this couple vacation so luxuriously all over the world. They're in ski resorts and boating on the ocean, and they're in New York City. This is all kind of in the middle of the 20th century, and the text is so private, it's so ruminative, that there's this kind of tension between image and the text that really benefits from this kind of inherently ambiguous tone, because that would change everything if there was tone of voice as you heard this text. And there's this kind of like longing where you just can't help but want to attach these words to a voice, to this person you see on screen who has this facade of happiness and pleasure and leisure, with these really thoughtful, contemplative musings about all kinds of things. I've just never seen something like this that seems to be a real work of kind of contrast between form and narrative, I guess. It's really something.
I completely agree in that I have absolutely never in my life seen anything like this. The only thing in like my contemporary like taking in of art form is I'll say briefly the only other separate piece of art that I've taken in and felt like was a sculpture after I was done with it. Like, although this is a film, I feel like after watching it, it's best described to other people allegorically as a sculpture, so that you can say that you're looking at something and then you're feeling something. And I think that there's another film called The Killing of, or not film, sorry, novel called The Killing of Commendatore from Haruki Murakami that is so deliberate and repetitive and mystical, but incredibly like based. The way that it's written is just very, very factual, like just basic operations that a human does. And by the end of it, you kind of hold an oblong statue or something in your hands, and you know all the ins and outs of it, but you don't really know what it is. And I think that this, like that, is one of those few pieces of art that transcends the medium that it's in to be best described through another medium.
Yeah, I like that a lot. This is a little bit of a pivot, but maybe one of the things I worry a little bit about on behalf of this doc is that a viewer might feel like they got the rug pulled out from under them, which I do not think is the intent. I think it is deliberately kind of playing with your expectations, but I don't think this is meant to be a wild surprise at the end. I don't know. I don't know if that sparks any ideas in your head or not, but I worry a little bit about that with people's reactions to it.
I think that there's the potential for that for people that are going in blind.
Yeah.
And this is a film that I would not recommend going in blind to. Which, you know, there's plenty of films that are bigger budget, more formulaically narrative, that I think are always best to go in blind. But something like this, it behooves one to have a clear understanding of some of the rails that you're going to be writing on. And that's still not going to keep you prepared for the sound effect of the archival plane footage and him being deaf now, and you wondering how he's like going and talking to these people in the cockpit while he's deaf.
Yeah.
But it will give you an undergirding of being able to at least think about this in a way that doesn't scare you off of it, right? Like, if I didn't know what was happening, I'm confident that I would have been kind of pushing it away because I wouldn't know how to watch what I'm seeing. And keeping up with the subtitles and then looking up and going, well, this doesn't make any sense. Like, it really is helpful to know that it kind of shouldn't make sense, and that you know, that's totally separate from the Leon Majorca plot line, and them both getting sick and having their own health difficulties. And gosh, this is one of the most personal unpersonal, I guess, at some level as well, films I've ever seen. It's just, you know, this is something you would want to share with someone when they ask, like, what can you do with the film art form? And this is like, well, you should check out Man with a Movie Camera, 1929 Russian film, and you should check this out, because what you can do with film and some words is pretty crazy. And if you use sound, it gets even wilder.
Yeah. I kept sort of thinking about if there was any sort of logic or rule to when there was sound and when there wasn't, and I really came up with nothing, except that it's more just about when it's right for the poetry of the thing, for something to come in, which I really like, that it just felt a bit more mysterious and kind of unexpected whenever it did drop in. I think that really worked. Yeah, I would second everything you said. You mentioned that detail about Vivian's husband's name being Leon, her lover being Leo. I think those hints are pretty important to not making you feel like you get the rug pulled out from under you, because there is clearly something going on. There are coincidences. There's some weirdness in just the form of the thing that you're like, clearly there is something bigger going on here. I think without that, it would be a little bit, I don't know, frustrating or something. But I just have to think anyone is going to recognize that they are being toyed with a little bit, and that's intentional. And that gives you a little bit of distance, I think. That's really important to kind of reflect on what you're watching versus it just immersing you in it.
One of my favorite touches here creatively is the choice to use things that are false as main plot points. I believe it was called Dexedrine or Dexedine, which is the pharmaceutical company that Leon is representing after he has to leave the Air Force because he has become deafened in the 40s, I believe. Might have been the 50s. And Dexedrine was canceled in like 1968 because it was found to be a placebo. So there's one falsity. There I think were two others, but the main one that I remember is the figure that she's quoting throughout this film was actually found out to have been a plagiarizer of many other great gurus and writers with statements and turns of phrase that he had collected that she's referencing. So she's referencing someone as a teacher that's really provided her with great insight, who themselves was not actually that. And just the levels and layers of falseness that create reality in real life. You know, there were people with Dexedrine or Dexedine that were making money, and it was false, and they were living a life based on it. That's just it's such an interesting way of pulling back this curtain and showing a tapestry on the ground and saying, look, see, you can't really take it with you, but you can see it.
Yeah, 100%. I think that is sort of the brilliant of the thing, is this kind of rhyming of the formal gambit, the deception that's going on at a formal level with these details within the narrative. Totally with you. I thought a little bit too about just the fact that both Vivian and Leon are having affairs. That's a kind of falsehood with each other in their marriage. Yeah, that there's something so satisfying about those echoes. Yeah, the placebo was a great touch because that comes right at the end. That's very satisfying.
I think this is probably my favorite VIFF title that we've covered so far, and might be my number one or number two documentary on the year here now, tied with Midnight Family. I don't really know which one I'm going to put first at the moment, but this one was absolutely lovely. How did you end up feeling about it, and where would you place it in your year?
Way up there in the year for me as well. Towards the top, no doubt. I have to look at the other documentaries I've seen to kind of figure out the order, but it's definitely up there as well. There's another documentary out this year called Bloody Nose, Empty Pockets, which came to mind when I was watching this, which is about a bar on its last day before closing. And that documentary has this similar kind of structural gimmick where this bar is not actually closing. They have hired actors to just sort of play out this scenario as if a bar was closing. And I think it was kind of inspired by something the directors heard about a bar somewhere closing. And I that's another doc that is similarly sort of playing with the truth and falseness of what you think you've seen. I did not like that one quite as much. That is one where I did feel like there aren't maybe enough hints kind of dropped. So yeah, long way of saying yes, this is also towards the top of my list for the year.
All right. Do you have a favorite scene?
Oh, geez. So many. What we haven't said is just like how beautiful this documentary is. This footage is just so incredible. It's in such incredible condition.
Let me interrupt you. Holy crap, dude. There's this home video shot off the side of a boat of water cresting as the boat cuts into it, just like feet away from it. And I've never seen home video footage that looks this beautiful before. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. 100%. One thing I read was that the footage itself was actually from the director's grandfather. He shot the material and she just found it in a box somewhere in their house or her house. yeah, just amazing, the richness of the color, the shots he gets, and they're in such incredible locations. I mean, some of those ski resort shots, Vivian even says herself, it looked like a Bruegel painting, and she's totally right about that. It looks incredible. Gosh, favorite shot is really freaking hard. One of the really kind of heartbreaking ones is where we see the house that they bought. I think they had recently bought, and she talks about wanting to fill the house with children someday, and that's when she talks about being infertile. She can't have kids, but it's just absolutely
dry branches on a tree.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's something about how clearly well off this couple is, and how it still invites so much empathy for them, even though they're just having a great time doing their thing, skiing and boating and everything. You still feel so much for these very upper middle class people traveling the world. So yeah, maybe that scene, the shots of the house and her not being able to fill it really hurt.
Yeah. Well, before I say mine, I will make one more point, which I totally spaced on until just now. And that is there becomes a kind of motif in this film after the camera's introduced, with her saying that he's not living life anymore. And I thought that was just so interesting. There's one point where she says, "We saw a black pig on this island." And then she says, "Well, actually, I saw it. Leon filmed it." And this is also coming at a point in time where she's introspective about the fact that there's a story about a man who lived on an island that is very small, and the man had never seen the ocean. And she was fascinated by that. And those two pieces, I don't know what to do with them, but they're so deeply intriguing and really moved me in a very deep way that really won me over as the film went on. But alas, my favorite scene is after we know that she is dying, ostensibly, even though she's not in the footage, and she is ostensibly in Majorca, and she is luxuriating in great royalty on a bed, just spread out like a Sofia Coppola dame, just enjoying herself in this beautiful suite. I really, really loved the juxtaposition of the prose to what I was looking at right there. That is my favorite.
Yeah, great stuff.
And that kind of ends VIFF coverage for this week with a Doc Talk episode included. You can catch Mr. Soul from I think about 50 different virtual screening theaters, one of which is SIFF if you want to support a theater local to Michael and myself. Into the Storm, I think, is still going through distribution, and hopefully my Mexican Bretzel will get acquired here soon and be widely available.
Yeah, I think that's one. It depends on when this episode of the podcast comes out, but I think that could be available to people through NYFF at the time it comes out. So,
really? Which one?
My Mexican Bretzel.
Oh,
great. I think that plays maybe next week at NYFF.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll try to get this out here in the next couple of days. We just dropped the first VIFF kickoff episode. And, we're going to be back next week with New York Film Festival coverage.
Right.
As well as VIFF coverage. So we've got a lot going on. All right, Michael. That's it.
Till next time.
Run! Go! Get to the chopper!
We have to go.
I'm coming with you.
That was brilliant.
You're the best and we love you!
And that's another one in the can.